keep it very brief as I want to get through this and I have a lot of questions. First, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be entered into record DD Form 3176, DD Form 3177 for qualifications. Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. With that, I also just want to note something that my colleague, Mr. Gates, had followed through on was the idea that these packages that were actually being submitted for a request of medical exemption or delay was being reviewed in a time span of about 12 minutes per to vet these to ensure the actual qualifications of whether they are qualified or not qualified. Now, have you seen these forms by chance, the DD 3176 or 3177?
I'm not familiar with that form that you're referring to, but I have looked at some of the packets that have gone through the process of being evaluated.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and explain really quickly some of the questions on here, which is quite lengthy, but it'll talk about the ideas of medical conditions and circumstances. It talks about your circumstance for being vaccinated, why you'd feel that you need to be exempt from it. It talks about your religious liberties, things like that. Do you think that anyone on this panel can answer that you have the qualifications and or the vetting process to be able to do this within 12 minutes, which is exactly what the DODIG said the average time is?
Representative, I would agree with my colleague here, Mr. Camarillo, when he stated earlier that these packages were giving a lengthy...
That's not what I asked. I asked, do you think they can be done in 12 minutes?
And my response is that they were given over a lengthy view and looked over...
So 12 minutes is a lengthy view in your opinion?
I don't think it was done in 12 minutes. I think they were done
So the DODIG is wrong is what you're saying? Then you're on record for saying that the DOD Inspector General is incorrect in this?
I think the DOD Inspector General looked at some kind of numbers and kind of did it and did some math and wrote a letter to the Secretary of his opinion. It's my understanding there's still an IG report on this topic that is coming out later this year. So
staying with you, Undersecretary Cisneros, you said in your statement just a moment ago that the United States military is as strong now as ever, even with the 8,400 purged out of our military and the 25,000 in shortage in our recruitment. So you're saying that we don't need those additional 30,000+ troops is what you're saying to maintain strength?
What my statement was, Congressman, is that the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, allowed us to go out and to train. It allowed us to operate. It allowed us to deploy around the world and keep up our mission and carry out the national defense strategy and defend the nation.
By increasing battle fatigue, sir. Because I can tell you, I spent over 7 years in Iraq, over 3 years in Afghanistan, Kosovo, Pakistan, was blown up twice in 2006. There is such thing as battle fatigue. Maybe you haven't experienced it because there wasn't recruitment shortages to the level they are right now, but they do exist. Let me move on to my next question, which is simply this. Are you familiar with the DoD Defense Casualty Analysis System?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The Department of Defense has a Defense Casualty Analysis System. Are you aware of it?
Yes, sir.
So then you should be aware that from the time period of 2000 to 2021, that the actual number of deaths due to illness has not changed. And in fact, the highest year was in 2009 with 277. And meanwhile, it says as a result of due to illnesses, you have, and I'll read these off quickly, but from 2010 through 2021, you had 238, 252, 246, 214, 195, 196, 173, 171. It actually starts coming down. 2019, 174. 2020, 154, 2020, 190, relatively unchanged in the last 22 years. Can you tell me again how the COVID vaccine contributed to that?
What I would tell you, sir, is the COVID vaccine allowed us to operate and to be able to deploy our forces around the world and make sure that we continue training and that we're able to carry out the national defense strategy and defend the nation.
Okay, and just a quick question. I noted that it was very simple that it said that administrative exemptions were typically granted for service members who were within 6 months of separation or retirement. You know, this is almost like the arbitrary thing where COVID only exists when you stand up, you have to wear your mask, but when you sit down, it magically goes away. So are you saying then that members who had 6 months or less had less risk of actually spreading the virus as those who have a year or more? This is your policies, by the way, sir.
That is what we were saying is when that was carried out, when people were allowed to go, they were still required to meet the force health protection guidance that was put out by the Department of Defense while they were still serving. And that was at times wearing their mask and doing what needed to be done in order to protect themselves and others from the COVID-19. what was granted and what the services did, and I'll let them explain it further, but if a member was getting out and they had made the decision to get out and they were within 6 months of separation, they were given the administrative
And
accommodation.
last question, what actual reentry code was everyone given who was forced separated?
You'd have to ask the services that, but I know there wasn't one specific. Each service has a different culture, and they did it on their own, depending their service and their culture as to what they did.
Well, I can tell you this, sir. As a military combat veteran and a proud service member, I will be pushing, as well as for, I'm sure that our chairman, as well as for the Armed Services Chairman, to allow these individuals who are unlawfully purged, in my opinion, to be re-entered into the military with their full benefits, their back pay, and be granted what they should have been given, which is a chance to serve our United States military. With that, I yield back.